Do you like mysteries? To wander through the enigmatic mist of the inexplicable? Great. I'm Merc, and here you'll find what you're looking for. Welcome to my domains. The truth dissolves into the mist.
The city breathes differently at night. Mexico City, a sprawling metropolis of nearly 22 million souls, transforms after sunset into something else entirely. The bustling avenues empty, the neon signs flicker against colonial facades, and the ancient ground beneath the asphalt seems to exhale. This is the hour when the veil between worlds grows thin, when the city remembers what it was before the conquistadors arrived, before the Aztecs built their temples, before any human set foot on this valley. It is a city built upon layers of history, each civilization burying the last, and with each burial something remains behind, something that watches from the shadows. In August of 2025, a video surfaced on TikTok that would captivate millions and ignite a firestorm of debate across the internet. The account was called at paranormal.othervoices, a channel known for sharing eerie and unexplained footage from around the world. But this particular clip was different. It didn't feature the usual grainy footage of distant lights in the sky or the predictable jump scares of amateur ghost hunters. This video, lasting barely over a minute, showed something far more unsettling. It showed a man, an urban explorer, venturing alone into the decaying heart of an abandoned building in the Mexican capital. And it showed what he found there. The footage begins with the familiar jitter of a handheld camera, the kind that tells you this is not a polished production but raw, unscripted reality. The explorer, whose identity remains unknown, navigates a labyrinth of crumbling corridors. The only light source is the narrow beam of his flashlight, cutting through the oppressive darkness like a knife through velvet. Dust motes dance in the light, disturbed by his passage. The air is thick with the smell of decay, of wet concrete and rusting metal. Every footstep echoes through the hollow shell of the structure, announcing his presence to whatever might be listening. And something, as he would soon discover, was indeed listening. He moves deeper into the building, his breath audible, a nervous rhythm that betrays his growing unease. The architecture speaks of a different era. Ornate moldings, now chipped and broken. Grand staircases, now treacherous with debris. This was once a place of importance, perhaps a hotel, perhaps a government building. Now it is a mausoleum of forgotten ambitions, a monument to entropy. The explorer passes through what was once a grand foyer, its ceiling now open to the night sky. The moonlight filters through, casting strange, shifting patterns on the walls. It is beautiful in a desolate way, and it is precisely this beauty that draws urban explorers to such places. The thrill of discovery, the poetry of decay. But beauty, in such places, often masks a deeper, more primal dread. He stops for a moment, perhaps to catch his breath, perhaps to steady his nerves. He pans the camera slowly across the room, capturing the detritus of abandonment. Broken furniture, shattered glass, graffiti left by previous visitors. The silence is almost absolute, broken only by the distant hum of the city, a sound that seems impossibly far away. Then a new sound emerges, faint at first, almost imperceptible, a whisper, a rapid skittering movement, like claws on concrete. The explorer freezes. He turns his head, trying to locate the source of the sound. The camera follows his gaze, but there is nothing there. Just the darkness, just the silence, just the growing certainty that he is no longer alone. He resumes his walk, but there is a new urgency in his step. He is no longer exploring, he is fleeing. The building seems to close in around him, the walls pressing closer, the shadows growing longer. He reaches a doorway, an entrance without a door, a black void that seems to absorb the light from his flashlight. He hesitates, his instinct screaming at him to turn back. But curiosity, that fatal flaw of the human condition, compels him forward. He raises the camera, and for a brief moment the darkness is pierced by the beam of his light. What the camera captured in that instant would become the subject of intense scrutiny, wild speculation, and profound fear. A figure standing motionless in the darkness. Not a shadow, not a trick of the light. A figure, solid and distinct, yet somehow wrong. Its proportions were humanoid, but its presence was anything but human, and its eyes. The eyes were the most terrifying detail. 2 points of crimson, burning like embers in the void. They did not reflect the light. They generated their own. They stared directly at the camera, directly at the explorer, directly at you. The explorer gasps, a sharp intake of breath that is audible even over the ambient noise. He stumbles backward, the camera shaking violently. For a fraction of a second, the figure remains, an unwavering sentinel of the darkness. And then, as quickly as it appeared, it is gone. The doorway is empty. The corridor is empty. The explorer is alone again. But the feeling of being watched does not dissipate. It intensifies. He begins to pray, his words a frantic murmur, a plea to any power that might be listening. He backs away from the doorway, his eyes fixed on the spot where the figure had stood. He does not turn his back. He knows, on some primal level, that turning his back would be a fatal mistake. The video ends abruptly, cutting to black. There is no explanation, no afterword. Just the raw, unedited terror of a man who came face to face with something that should not exist. The video was shared thousands of times within hours, and within days it had been viewed by millions. The comments section became a battlefield, a clash between skeptics and believers, between those who saw a clever hoax and those who recognized something far more sinister. But the debate was not limited to the authenticity of the footage. A more disturbing question emerged, a question that would lead us down a rabbit hole of ancient lore and forbidden knowledge. What, exactly, had the explorer encountered? For many, the answer was immediate and unequivocal. The figure in the darkness, with its crimson eyes and its ability to appear and vanish at will, bore all the hallmarks of a Djinn, a creature of smokeless fire, mentioned in the Koran and woven into the fabric of pre-Islamic Arabian mythology. A being of immense power, capable of shapeshifting and influencing the mortal world. The word genie, so often associated with whimsical wishes and magical lamps, is a pale and sanitized corruption of this ancient and terrifying concept. The true Djinn are not playful spirits. They are forces of nature, unpredictable and dangerous, inhabiting the forgotten places of the world. Abandoned buildings, desolate ruins, the deep desert. Places where the boundary between our world and theirs becomes permeable. This identification resonated with a specific detail from the video. The explorer, in his moment of terror, had begun to pray. This is a common instinct, a reflex born of desperation. But the specific nature of his prayer, as noted by some viewers, was significant. In Islamic tradition, certain verses from the Quran are believed to offer protection against Djinn. The act of reciting these verses is not merely a comfort, it is a weapon. The explorer's prayer was not a plea, it was a defense, and the figure, upon hearing it, had vanished. Not because it was a trick of the light, but because it was repelled. But to understand what happened in that abandoned building in Mexico City, we must first understand the Djinn themselves. We must separate the truth from the fiction, the ancient belief from the modern distortion. We must ask ourselves the uncomfortable question that the video forces upon us. What if the stories we have dismissed as mere folklore are, in fact, a record of a reality we have chosen to forget? What if the world is far stranger, and far more dangerous than we are willing to admit. The figure in the video, with its burning red eyes and its impossible presence, challenges everything we think we know about the nature of existence. It is a reminder that we are not alone in this world, and that the shadows, in the end, are not empty. The explorer, whose name was later rumored to be Omar, a detail that adds a layer of tragic irony given the Arabian origins of the Djinn myth, has never come forward. He has not claimed the video as his own, nor has he offered any explanation. The account that posted the footage at paranormal.othervoices has remained silent, offering no clues as to the video's origin or its authenticity. This silence has only fueled the speculation. Some believe the explorer was too traumatized to speak. Others believe he is protecting his identity, perhaps because the exploration was illegal. A more sinister theory suggests that the encounter had consequences that he is not at liberty to discuss. The building itself, the location of this disturbing event, has become a subject of intense curiosity. Urban explorers, the very community from which the original explorer emerged, have attempted to locate the site. But Mexico City is vast, a labyrinth of over 20 million people, and its abandoned structures are numerous. Some have claimed to have found the building, only to discover that the footage does not match the interior. Others have reported strange experiences in their own explorations, further blurring the line between reality and the supernatural. The city, it seems, is full of secrets, and not all of them are willing to remain buried. As we delve deeper into this mystery, we must examine the cultural and historical context that makes Mexico City such a fertile ground for encounters with the unknown. The city is not just a modern metropolis. It is a palimpsest of civilizations. The Aztecs, who called the valley Tenochtitlan, believed the world was inhabited by countless spirits. They built their temples on the ruins of older settlements, each layer adding to the spiritual density of the place. The Spanish, in their conquest, attempted to erase these beliefs, replacing them with Christianity. But they did not succeed. The old gods, the old spirits, they simply went underground, waiting in the shadows for the right moment to re-emerge. The Djinn, though rooted in Arabian and Islamic tradition, have found a strange resonance in the folklore of Mexico. There are parallels in indigenous beliefs, stories of shape-shifting beings, of spirits that inhabit the wilderness, of entities that can grant power or inflict suffering. The syncretism of Mexican culture, the blending of indigenous and European traditions, has created a unique spiritual landscape, one where the boundaries between different belief systems are porous and fluid. A Djinn, in this context, is not an alien import. It is a familiar archetype, a manifestation of a universal human fear of the unknown. The video, therefore, is not just a viral curiosity. It is a cultural artifact. It speaks to a deep-seated anxiety, a collective unease that pervades modern life. We live in an age of science and reason, an age that has supposedly banished the supernatural to the realm of fairy tales. And yet, when faced with evidence that challenges this worldview, we are drawn to it with a mixture of horror and fascination. The video of the Djinn in Mexico City taps into something primal within us, a fear that we have not fully conquered, a memory of a time when the world was filled with magic and monsters. The debate over the video's authenticity rages on, but perhaps that is the wrong question to ask. The question is not whether the video is real or fake. The question is why we are so eager to believe. Why does the image of a dark figure with crimson eyes resonate so deeply within us? Why do we want it to be real? Perhaps because it offers a glimpse into a world that is more mysterious, more dangerous, and ultimately more meaningful than the sterile, rational universe we have constructed for ourselves. The Djinn, real or imagined, represents the return of the repressed, the eruption of the irrational into the orderly world of modern life. We have become so accustomed to the idea that we are alone in the universe, that we are the pinnacle of creation, the sole possessors of consciousness and will. The Djinn, in their ancient and terrifying power, challenged this assumption. They remind us that there are other wills at work in the world, other intelligences that operate according to laws we do not understand. They are a humbling presence, a reminder that we are not masters of our own domain. The abandoned building in Mexico City, with its crumbling walls and its whispering shadows, is a microcosm of this larger truth. It is a place where the illusion of control dissolves, where the boundaries between the known and the unknown become dangerously thin. The silence of the abandoned building is not a passive absence of sound. It is an active presence, a pressure on the eardrums, a weight on the mind. The explorer, whose name we will call Omar, as the rumors suggest, felt this pressure the moment he stepped through the shattered entrance. The air was colder inside, a damp chill that seemed to seep into his bones. The sounds of the city, the distant traffic, the hum of the electrical grid, all faded away, replaced by a profound and unsettling quiet. It was as if the building existed in a bubble, cut off from the flow of time and space. As if, once inside, he had entered a different world entirely. He had been exploring abandoned buildings for years, a hobby that had taken him to the forgotten corners of several countries. He knew the rules, the unspoken code of the urban explorer. Never go alone. Always tell someone where you are going. Carry multiple light sources. And above all, trust your instincts. If a place feels wrong, it is wrong. Leave immediately. But on this particular night, in this particular building, Omar had broken his own rules. He was alone. He had not told anyone his precise location. And his instincts, which had been screaming at him since he entered, were being overridden by a compulsive curiosity, a need to see what lay at the heart of this decaying structure. The building, he had learned from online forums, was a former hospital, abandoned for decades after a fire that had claimed dozens of lives. The story was unconfirmed, a piece of urban legend that had attached itself to the site. But the details were chilling. The fire had started in the psychiatric ward. The story went, and the patients had been trapped behind locked doors. Their screams, it was said, could still be heard on certain nights, echoing through the empty corridors. Omar had dismissed this as mere folklore, the kind of story that every abandoned building attracts. But now, standing in the cold, silent darkness, he was not so sure. He moved through the building, his flashlight beam illuminating a scene of desolation. The walls were stained with water damage, the paint peeling in long, curling strips. The floor was littered with debris, broken glass, and the remnants of furniture. He passed through rooms that had once been wards, the beds long gone, leaving only the rusted frames and the faint, lingering smell of antiseptic. He passed through offices, the desks overturned, the papers scattered and decayed. The building was a monument to suffering, a place where the echoes of pain seemed to have soaked into the very walls. And yet, it was not the history of the place that disturbed him. It was something else, something more immediate. He heard the whisper again, a sibilant sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. He spun around, his flashlight cutting a frantic arc through the darkness. There was nothing there. Just the empty corridor, the peeling paint, the oppressive silence. But the whisper had been real. He was certain of it. It was not the wind, for there was no wind. It was not the settling of the building, for the sound was too deliberate, too articulate. It was a voice, a whisper, a word that he could not quite make out, a name, perhaps, or a warning. He quickened his pace, his heart pounding in his chest. The corridor seemed to stretch on forever, the walls closing in on him. He felt a surge of panic, a primal fear that bypassed his rational mind and went straight to his lizard brain. He wanted to run, to flee this place and never return. But his legs felt heavy, as if he were wading through water. He forced himself to move forward, his eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of danger. And then he saw it, a doorway, an entrance without a door, a black void that seemed to pulse with its own malevolent energy. He approached it cautiously, his flashlight beam trembling. He peered into the darkness, his breath caught in his throat. The room beyond was large, perhaps a former operating theater. The windows were boarded up, and the only light came from his flashlight. He could see the outline of a table in the center of the room, a metal slab that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. And then he saw the figure. It was standing in the corner, motionless, its form indistinct but unmistakably humanoid. Its eyes, 2 points of crimson light, stared directly at him. He felt a wave of terror wash over him, a cold, paralyzing fear that routed him to the spot. He wanted to scream, but no sound came out. He wanted to run, but his legs would not obey. He was trapped, a helpless prey in the presence of a predator. The figure began to move, not walking but gliding, sliding across the floor without making a sound. It approached him, its eyes burning brighter, its form becoming more distinct. He could see now that it was tall, unnaturally tall, its limbs too long, its proportions wrong. It was not human. It was something else entirely, something that wore the shape of a human but was not one. He raised his camera, a reflex born of his profession, and pointed it at the figure. He wanted to capture this, to have proof of what he was seeing. The figure seemed to react to the camera, its head tilting slightly, as if it were curious. And then it began to change. Its form wavered, becoming translucent, then solid again. The eyes flickered, and for a moment they seemed to be not red, but black pits of absolute nothingness. Omar felt a surge of revulsion, a deep, instinctual disgust that was more than just fear. It was the feeling of encountering something that should not exist, a violation of the natural order. He began to pray, the words tumbling from his lips in a frantic whisper. He did not know why he chose those words. He was not a particularly religious man. But in that moment, it was the only thing that made sense. The words were a shield, a protection against the thing that was approaching him. The figure stopped, its head tilting further, as if listening. The eyes flickered again, and for a brief moment they seemed to dim. And then the figure vanished, as if it had never been there. The room was empty. The darkness was silent. Omar stood there for a long moment, his body trembling, his mind reeling. He did not know how long he had been standing there, seconds or minutes. He slowly lowered the camera and looked around the room. There was no sign of the figure. There was no sign that anything had been there at all. He turned and fled, running through the corridors, stumbling over debris, his flashlight beam bouncing wildly. He did not stop until he was outside, gasping for breath in the cool night air. He looked back at the building, its dark silhouette looming against the sky, and he knew that he would never enter another abandoned building again. The video he had recorded, the proof of his encounter, would eventually find its way to TikTok. To the account at Paranormal Other Voices, it would be seen by millions, dissected by experts, and debated by skeptics. But the truth of what happened in that building, the full truth, would remain with Omar alone. He knew what he had seen. He knew that the figure was not a trick of the light, not a figment of his imagination. It was real. It was a Djinn, a creature of ancient legend, a being of immense power, and it had chosen to reveal itself to him. The implications of this encounter are staggering. If the figure in the video was indeed a Djinn, then everything we thought we knew about the world is wrong. The universe is not a cold, empty void. It is teeming with life, with intelligence, with forces that we cannot comprehend. The boundaries between our world and the next are not fixed. They are permeable, and at any moment, something from the other side could cross over. The abandoned buildings, the forgotten places, the dark corners of the world, they are not empty. They are inhabited, and the inhabitants are not always friendly. The stories of Djinn are not mere folklore. They are a warning that we are not alone, that there are other wills at work in the world. other intelligences that operate according to laws we do not understand. The Djinn are not the playful spirits of popular culture. They are forces of nature, unpredictable and dangerous. They can grant wishes, yes, but those wishes often come with a terrible price. They can be bound, but the binding is never permanent. They can be summoned, but the summoning is never safe. The encounter in Mexico City is a reminder that we should be careful what we seek, because we might just find it. The video continues to circulate, a ghost in the machine of the internet. It has been analyzed frame by frame, enhanced, and scrutinized. Some have claimed to see details that others have missed, a face in the darkness, a hand reaching out. Others have dismissed it as a clever hoax, a piece of viral marketing for an upcoming horror film. But no one has been able to definitively prove or disprove its authenticity. The mystery remains, a tantalizing glimpse into the unknown, and as long as the mystery remains, the fascination will continue. The explorer, Omar, has never come forward. He has vanished from the online community, his social media accounts deactivated, his identity a secret. Some say he is dead, killed by the trauma of the encounter. Others say he is hiding, afraid of what the Djinn might do if he reveals himself. A more optimistic theory suggests that he is simply living his life, trying to forget what he saw in that abandoned building. But forgetting, as anyone who has experienced true terror knows, is not always possible. The memories remain, lurking in the shadows of the mind, waiting for the right moment to resurface. Mexico City, with its ancient history and its vibrant, chaotic energy, remains a place of mystery. The abandoned buildings, the forgotten corners, the dark alleys, they are all portals to another world, a world that exists just beneath the surface of our own. The encounter with the Djinn is not an isolated incident. It is a symptom of a larger truth. The world is not what it seems. The darkness is not empty. And we, for all our science and our reason, are still vulnerable to the forces that lurk in the shadows. As you sit here, watching this video, in the safety of your home, consider this. The boundaries between our world and the next are not as solid as we believe. There are places, there are moments, where the veil grows thin. The abandoned building in Mexico City is one such place, but it is not the only one. There are places like it all over the world, waiting for the right person, the right moment, to reveal their secrets. The question is not whether the Djinn exist. The question is whether you are ready to encounter them. And if you are, what will you do when the figure with the crimson eyes appears before you? The answer, perhaps, lies in the ancient wisdom of the traditions that gave birth to the Djinn myth. The Quran, the holy book of Islam, offers guidance on how to protect oneself from such beings. The recitation of certain verses, the adherence to certain rituals, can provide a shield against the malevolent forces that lurk in the shadows. But even with such protection, there is no guarantee of safety. The Djinn are powerful, and they are patient. They can wait for years, decades, even centuries, for the right opportunity to strike. The encounter in Mexico City is a warning, a reminder that we are not as secure as we think. The video, in its brief and terrifying duration, has captured something that transcends the boundaries of the ordinary. It has given us a glimpse into a world that most of us will never see, a world that exists just beyond the reach of our perception. It has challenged our assumptions about reality, forcing us to confront the possibility that we are not alone. The figure with the crimson eyes, the whisper in the darkness, the feeling of being watched, these are not just the stuff of nightmares. They are the stuff of truth. And so, we are left with a choice. We can dismiss the video as a hoax, a clever piece of fiction designed to entertain, or we can accept it for what it appears to be, a genuine encounter with the unknown. The choice is yours. But remember, once you have seen the figure with the crimson eyes, once you have heard the whisper in the darkness, you cannot unsee it. You cannot unhear it. The knowledge will stay with you. a shadow at the edge of your consciousness, a reminder that the world is far stranger and far more dangerous than you ever imagined. The Djinn are real, and they are waiting.
Did you like this mystery? And what is your theory? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed it, then like and share. I'm Merc, and I'll be waiting for you in the next mystery.